Steve has been working with us for quite some time, and he's one of the good ones. So, in the interest of time, and so that he can jump through the presentation and excite all of you, I will pass it off to you, Steve, to tell the Silver Viper story.
Perfect. Thanks, Sebastian, and thanks to Red Cloud for hosting another great event, and again for the continued support and partnership that we've had throughout the years. I will be making some forward-looking statements today, so we'll draw your attention to that slide. When you're looking to invest in a precious metals exploration company, I think there are three things you really need to focus on. One, that it's got a high-quality asset. Two, that it has lots of potential. And three, that it has a strong management and shareholder group behind it. In the case of the La Virginia project and Silver Viper, we certainly have that. This project was Minefinder's #1 exploration project when they were bought by Pan American Silver for $1.5 billion in 2013. What Minefinders had done is they flew this entire mountain range looking for another Dolores mine. Dolores sits 100K to the south, just across the Sonora border into Chihuahua. And then 100K to the north of La Virginia, you have the El Tigre, which was a past-producing mine that Silver Tiger now has. In between, you have no large-scale mines in that belt, and that's very abnormal for Mexico and the periodicity of mines that you would expect. So a lot of it is a case that this area was harder to get to, though that the Sierra Madre mountain range, there's not as many roads throughout it. So, people typically in Sonora have focused on the desert and the easier to access stuff. With that being said, we certainly have good infrastructure here. We have a power line corridor going right through the project. We have water year round, and we take a highway from Hermosillo to the local town of Nacori Chico, and from there we're about 30 minutes in on a gravel and dirt road. We got involved with the project in 2018. All of the work that had been done by Minefinders was focused on one very small portion of the project, predominantly the Las Guatas and Virginia area. They did over 50,000 meters of drilling and spent over $10 million on the project. But most of this large land package that sits at 37,000 hectares was never even mapped, sampled, had no work done on it. So after we got involved in 2018, we did some drilling in the historic area to fill in some gaps. But at the end of that first phase of drilling, we hit our #1 exploration target, which was El Ruby. We put 5 reconnaissance holes into that and made a brand new discovery. That area sits about 5 kilometers north of where the historic work was done. Our discovery hole was 13.3 meters, over 3 grams gold and over 200 silver. Since then, you've started to see results like you saw in hole 218, where we had 3 meters of over 22 grams and over 1,400 silver. What we have at El Ruby is a very high-grade structure, but then we also get these low-grade halos and high-grade stringer zones off of that. Our most recent hole that was reported was hole 245, and that was a brand new discovery of a brand new lode that sits 100 meters west of our main El Ruby discovery. That was our widest interval to date, 110 meters, grading 0.75 gold and 38 grams silver. And what that hole is really starting to bring to attention is the open pit potential of El Ruby. What we would envision is that starting as an open pit heap leach mine and then going underground on those high-grade structures afterwards. I speak about potential. We're working on the maiden resource for the project right now. We're targeting having that out by the end of the year. Our independent will be going to site in the first week of November. When he comes home to Canada, he has to quarantine for 2 weeks because of COVID, and he's going to be working away on that report. If we don't have the results of that report by the first week of December, I think you could expect to see it come out, post-Christmas into January. But we're really targeting trying to get that resource out by the end of the year. I speak about, also speaking about potential, we have lots of different anomalies and other targets that have either been drilled and we're waiting assays, or targets that have never been drilled. So there's lots of potential still moving forward for additional discoveries just within that El Ruby portion of the project. Strong management and shareholder support. Our group is part of the Belcara Management Group. We have 3 public companies under our management at the moment, Orex Minerals, Barcelli Minerals, and Silver Viper. We have 4 senior geologists in our group with over 150 years combined experience. They've worked for the majors and juniors. I think, we have, if not the strongest, one of the strongest technical teams in the space. And our team has the respect of the majors. We've had partnerships in the past or currently with Agnico Eagle, Fresnillo, Pan American multiple times, Coeur, First Majestic, Hecla. These are all companies that we've worked with. Our last big success was selling the Orco Silver, which was the La Preciosa deposit in Durango. And we sold that. That was a project we put the first drill hole into and grew it to 270 million ounces of silver, and sold that in a bidding war between Coeur and First Majestic in 2013. That's the model that our company tries to operate on. we will get involved somewhere along the exploration timeline, take the project as far as a feasibility study, but then look to vend it off to one of the majors. For us, that's the liquidity event that our shareholders gain the most on, getting that premium that you get with a takeover. We are very good at exploration, but we are not producers, and we've seen far too many of our peers try and get greedy and take something all the way and have all the headaches, and their shareholders suffer for it. So we know where we sit, what we're very strong at, and again, we've made a lot of money for shareholders in the past with that model. The La Virginia project, like I said, 220 kilometers east of Hermosillo, which has an international airport. Again, very easy to get to, even though we're in more of a rugged environment. This picture up here on the right, on the right there, our camp is based on that hill, where El Ruby, where we made our discovery, is on the backside of that hill. The picture is being taken from the Las Huatas area of the project. Here you can see our option agreement. We gave Pan American a 2% NSR for all their ground. When you're looking at that image in the top left, their ground was everything that was in red. So we own that 100%. That also gave us ownership of all of the physical core, which we have stored in Hermosillo, and all of the physical database. We struck a heavily back-end loaded option agreement on those internal blue claims. Again, making sure that all the money that we're putting predominantly is going into the ground. Of note, that last payment, also half of that can be paid in shares at our discretion. We also gave a 2% NSR just on those internal claims, but that NSR we have the right to buy back for $2 million in the first 5 years or $3 million for the life of the project after. You can see here on that middle image, all the black dots, that's where the historic pads were from Mine Finders and Pan American's time. They really took a shotgun approach to drilling. A lot of those pads saw 12, 15 holes. They were using large track-mounted rigs at the time and bulldozing in roads. So they were having a lot of success in this area, so that's kind of why they stayed on that small portion of those internal claims. You can see El Ruby at the top where we made our discovery, and that's the start of El Ruby, where we're exploring now. Has carried on to the Pan American ground as we move north on El Ruby. That image on the left, you can see the kind of black line that looks a bit like a railway track. That's the large regional fault that is the major controlling structure in the area. Our structures run parallel to that fault. They outcrop as large silicified dikes, and you can see them running and outcropping for tens of kilometers along surface. All of that north-south line, especially east of that fault, is highly prolific for mineralization, for potential mineralization. There are some old workings in that historic area, Virginia and Las Huatas. The pictures here kind of showing you an idea of what it looks like underground. The image on the top left is at the La Virginia target. It's a bit narrower, but a high grade structure. The stockwork veining that you can see there is in an area where mineralization is about 20 meters true thickness wide, and you can see that stockwork veining that's very typical of this low sulfidation epithermal system. As we move north to El Ruby and where our work is focused, you still have that stockwork veining, but you also get a lot of these breccias that are coming in from second, third, fourth events on the project. You get the banded smoky quartz with those breccias, and when we see the breccias and the stockwork, typically that's where we're getting into our highest grade veining. El Ruby is where we're focused. You can see, kind of one of our man-portable rig working away there. That man-portable rig is important. We're environmentally permitted to work, across the entire project. We reuse all the lumber for the pads, and once we're done, we throw down some grass seed, and all that's left is a drill collar, and you can't really tell that we've ever been there. We use mules and donkeys to transport the core to our staging area. They bring in the diesel fuel for the rig. The drillers hike in every shift. They're working 2 shifts a day, 24 hours a day. We've done approximately 15,000 meters so far in our phase 2 program this year, and it's the technology's come a long ways with man-portable rigs, even from when Mine Finders would have been exploring on this. Those man-portable rigs, if we wanted to, they could say they can go as deep as 1,000 meters now, with fairly low deviation on those deeper holes. We've done, I think our longest hole is about 500 meters, and they've been very accurate, very quick. We get very competent core back. Global Export's done a great job as a drilling partner for us. The image on the bottom right there, very interesting. It was taken through a microscope, looking at some of the visible gold that we've been seeing in our core at El Ruby, and kind of a cool picture. That for us has been rare. That's not something we're accustomed to in Mexico. You don't often see a lot of visible gold. In our case, a lot of that is gold and silver alloyed as electrum, and then you can see the darker bits there would be some of the silver mineralization also in that area. And our silver, that mineralization is hosted in acanthite. We highlight a lot of our high grade results here, which is the main El Ruby structure and some of the stringer zones. What we don't show on this slide, however, is the low grade halos that we get around the main El Ruby structure and also in now hole 245, which we'll talk about again in a bit here. But again, we're seeing the potential to go underground on these types of structures, but I think El Ruby, as we find more and more material, ultimately will start as an open pit heap leach. Hole 245 was again the one that showed kind of the game changer there. You can see on this image on the right, and some of these are a bit oblique, but it lines up very well. The main El Ruby structure is on the eastern boundary of this, the high grade structure, where we hit that new zone of mineralization in 245 sits about 100 meters to the west. We originally did this as our hole trying to pick up some of the high grade stringers that we've seen down deep in some of the other holes. And so we were expecting to hit mineralization up here, but what we weren't expecting was to see this very broad, low-grade zone of mineralization with some high-grade kickers still in the middle. A very consistent zone. And again, when you're looking at an image like that, you really start to envision what an open pit would look like on that area. You can see on here, again, our main El Ruby structure lining up very nicely, and then you can see, again, 100 meters to the west, how hole 245 lines up. With the slowdown with COVID and assays, we've just gotten our rig back to that zone to start following up on 245. I think it's completed the next hole, and that's a 50-meter step out. Again, scissor drilled that same kind of direction, trying to pick up that zone again. And from visuals, we certainly hit that zone again, but we'll see what assays come back with. But we're very excited about this western zone and really starting to grow El Ruby in this area and then continuing to grow Ruby as we move north. El Ruby, the main zone, is gone. It's 500 meters of strike length. We've taken it down as deep as 350 meters of depth. It's still open along strike and at depth. The other important thing as we talk about open pit heap leach mining is that El Ruby area is far more favorable than the historic area for open pit mining. It's very steep in the historic area, but El Ruby, where we made our discovery, is at the start of a 2 kilometer by 2 kilometer flat plateau. So we would have far less strip. We will build a lot more ounces a lot quickly at El Ruby versus ounces at that historic area. This is some of the core from hole 245. Again, very typical El Ruby core. You can see the stockwork veining. You can see the breccias. One of our fears when we first saw that interval was, did we somehow drill straight down something? But after looking at the photos of the core, we're very much still in that same stockwork environment, and we're interpreting that zone as being a vertical zone still. This is another section. Kind of, you can see here why we were targeting that hole drilling the way we did. This is off a different section, but we were trying to pick up the conceptual idea of these high-grade stringers. The main El Ruby structure is this thicker structure that comes down here, and what we were doing was trying to pick up some of these high-grade holes. As it turned out, if we look at the section now, the 245 would be sitting on this conceptual image would be quite a bit different. What is similar, though, is the host rock. We have mineralization in both the andesites and the rhyolites, but the andesites tend to be more favorable for the broader widths and higher grades. The rock there just is a bit more brittle and has allowed the fluids to expand and really mineralize the stuff in the lighter green colored andesite volcanic clastic agglomerate here. We mentioned some of the anomalies. We have 2 rigs turning right now. One rig, like I said, has gone back to that western zone at El Ruby. It was a rig that we had that did some reconnaissance work at the eastern anomaly, and then it stepped back and drilled a couple of targets, in this kind of 2 kilometer gap as it got up, was working its way back to El Ruby and back on top of the plateau. The other rig is finishing up at the northern anomaly, and we'll be moving back to start testing some different step outs on the main El Ruby structure. So we're going to have both rigs around El Ruby. The guys are in the field and have been tightening the spacing up here in this northeastern anomaly, trying to get that target to be drill ready, as well as the stuff up in here. We're very interested in this area. These, for your visual concept here, these lines are 800 meters apart and each dot is 50 meters apart. So these were indiscriminate samples taken across here, and it's been very interesting how much this lit up. We can see some of those silicified dikes outcropping on surface up in that area as well. So we're really trying to get that spacing tightened down, and that's been ongoing. So I would expect to be getting a rig up into there at some point in the near future as well. Again, lining up with those same targets is this geophysics anomaly, which is this large arrowhead shape. Very interesting that they all happen on the periphery of This arrowhead, we're interpreting that arrowhead and being very confident that that's a buried intrusion in this area and was probably providing a lot of the plumbing for a lot of mineralization here. Again, very target-rich environment and lots of area here for this portion of the project in itself to expand. It also looks like up here in that northeast, we have another intrusion that's coming up and buried underneath the surface as well. 2020 exploration plans ongoing. We've had 2 rigs. We've been evaluating possibly adding additional rigs. I think we'll wait now until the new year just with the way the lab is and get caught up on assays, but that's definitely on our radar to be expanding on the program. We've completed all the helicopter airborne magnetics and surveys. The LiDAR survey should be happening here within the next month, which gives us that advanced topographic that we need for the resource as well in the El Ruby area. And we just talked about the continued reconnaissance prospecting program. We're working towards the maiden resource. This was done after our phase 1 program. This is what the wireframes will look like in the historic area, and you can see kind of some of the topography. This is what we need the LiDAR survey for because the data from Pan American and that ended right at the very start of El Ruby, so that LiDAR survey will pick up there, and that also will give us another level of information, especially when we're targeting some of these step outs at El Ruby moving between the northern anomaly and the main El Ruby structure. We've also done some of our preliminary metallurgical work. This, we've had this for a while, seeing, that, again, gold and silver alloyed is electrum and hosted in acanthite. No, bad materials here. This is very typical of low sulfidation epithermal systems. You should see a news release in the, the next couple of weeks as we get some assays in, but also we'll touch on our preliminary metallurgy. Again, this what we saw in that was this rock leaches very well. Our gold recoveries were all over 90% across all grade ranges, and even just on the simple bottle roll, seeing the silver leach anywhere from 60 to 70% was a very good start. I would envision the high-grade silver reporting to a different circuit, and we're starting that metallurgical work to look at what recoveries would look like on that. But again, we're not expecting any issues there on that front. So we're very excited about our start on metallurgy as well, and a very important box to tick off on projects like these. We mentioned Belcara Group and La Preciosa. We won't spend too much time on that, but this is some of the key people on the team, and again references the Orco Silver discovery and sale. We just recently completed a acceleration clause on our warrants from a financing a year ago, so this is now the up-to-date share structure. We've got 81 million outstanding, fully diluted 93.5. We've only got the warrants now from the financing that closed in June, which are all at 50 cents. We've kind of been under the perfect storm from a share price perspective with the pullback in metals prices, the chaos of COVID over the last month, and the second wave ideas, having that acceleration clause kick in, and then the shares coming free trading from the last financing. So it has certainly created an opportunity right now for people to build a position at prices that we certainly didn't expect a month ago when we were hitting all-time highs at 85 cents. But I think it's a great opportunity for investors to get involved. We're not racing the market right now to do another financing. We're well cashed up. If we get the share price back to something that is of interest to do a financing, then we'll look at that. But we're more than cashed up to complete our work program this year and start our program next year. And we'll make that decision when we come to it. But I think right now you've got a really good opportunity to go in and buy shares in the open market. You can look at Derek's reports at Red Cloud. He's very favorable of the project, and very good source of independent information there. And when you look at our institutional list, we have the who's who of investors in our space, especially for a company our size. We're very strong on the institutional front. This is some of the larger positions that have been with the company longer, but we've also had 18 new funds participate on the last 2 financings. So there's a lot of other funds that own fairly significant positions as well in this company. Management owns 23%. We're active in the market, supporting the stock when we can, and we have the cash. We want our interests aligned with our shareholders, and we all want to win in the end with the takeover. In summary, we've got a high-quality asset, new discovery, great jurisdiction, strong management technical team, lots of blue sky potential, great shareholder support, and a healthy treasury. With that, we can end the presentation and open it up for questions.
Thanks for that. We have about 10 seconds left here, so your timing is impeccable. But I'd just like to say, once again, thanks, Steve, for joining us today. And if people are interested, both your companies have been serial success stories, or all 3 of them have been success stories. But the recent 2 have been serial success stories for a lot of of investors. So we appreciate that from your team, and we look forward to more success in the future.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks
Thanks,
very
everyone.
much.
Time to listen.